the second panel, which will take place in the business stage, will be we will be speaking about the service design in Slovenia. Why, when, where, and who. You will hear some concrete stories and advices of the Slovenian companies and how they stepped in the game of service design. So I will lead this panel and I will just take off my jacket now because it got warm here. Petra, see you later on, and yes, let's meet in a couple of seconds.
Thank you, Aleš. Hurry up. Ladies and gentlemen.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion about service design in Slovenia. We will talk about why, when, where, and who in Slovenia is working something really concrete on service design. So services are booming and taking on an increasingly important role in our daily lives and in our communities. So as customers become more and more critical and demanding, it is becoming even more important to design these services even more efficiently. Over the past 30 years, many service design methods have been developed in order to understand the customer's perspective. So how have these methods reshaped the Slovenian service sector, in which industries has design thinking taken root, and many more will be spoken today with these two ladies and three gentlemen from 5 different companies. My name is Aleš Ugovšek from Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia, and I will be hosting these 5 fine guests for the next hour and a quarter approximately. So let's see, who do we have today? I will be gentlemen, so I will start with ladies first, and then I will be also objectively correct and present you in alphabetical order. So I will start with Anna Osredkar. Anna Osredkar is a co-founder of Service 8 and the director of Service 8, the first service design studio in Ljubljana. Anna believes in the power of creative problem solving, aligning teams around a common purpose and breaking down organizational silos. As a service designer, she helps organizations to fix broken services and design also new ones. So Anna, welcome. How are you feeling and what did you bring today with yourself?
Hello, everybody. What did I bring? I brought, like many of you might imagine, a Post-it, or several of them.
And why do you use the Post-it? Just for explanation, with all of my guests, we decided that each of our guests will bring one object that associates him or her to service design. So yes, Anna, why Post-it?
So yes, service design and Post-its, or a lot of design work today, is basically Post-its are one of the essential tools that we use for quick visualization of concepts and ideas. So this is something that I would usually have with me. And it is before we put these ideas and concepts or whatever we're developing into something more concrete as the tools that we use in terms of boundary objects, so like personas or journey maps and other tools that we use.
Okay, great. This seems quite logical and common. Thank you, Anna. I will continue with our next lady, Vojka Kos, who works in the company YUP as a group strategic marketing manager and has more than 20 years of experiences in construction finishing works. Her current role enables her to efficiently combine the knowledge about the market, brands, chemistry, and her passion to bring the best solution for our users. Vojka, hello and welcome. What did you bring with you today?
I have brought with me a small box with keys. Why this? Because the key reminds me of key turn solutions. Of course, I'm looking at service design more from the perspective of production company. And it's sure that in the future, physical product will be nothing else but commodity, and there will be services that will bring added value.
Okay.
So therefore, the key.
Thank you. A very, very good object, and also very logical and showing to the future. Thank you, Vojka. The third one will be Marin Medak, who is the co-founder of De La Spina, a prescription eyewear startup with unique home try experience. Before pursuing business ideas, he led successful sea kayaking and ocean rowing expeditions. And interesting among others, Marin was a crew member of Slovenian-British rowing expedition across the Atlantic Ocean in 2012. Marian, that's quite incredible. Welcome here. And how do you feel after so many experiences at the sea?
I think, thank you for having me. I think a challenge is a challenge. It doesn't matter if it's a sports one or a business one. It's if you put the focus on it, you can really do many things.
I guess you didn't bring kayak with yourself.
I didn't, but I brought the packaging that we developed for the prototyping phase of when we're designing our process for De La Spina. And it's actually interesting because we developed it very quickly and we used it already for testing, but it was so successful that now actually this is more shared on Instagram than our glasses.
Okay, so it is like an influencer product.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marin. The next one who is today with us is Primož Mahne, who is a design research lead and brand strategist at Gigo Design. His responsibilities include design research projects, identifying business and innovation opportunities for prominent national and also global brands. He has been working in various sectors, from heavy machinery to automotive to consumer packager goods and also service organizations. Primož, welcome. How are you feeling today?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to share this virtual stage with all these fine people here. And I'm sure it's going to be very inspiring.
Yeah, I also believe so. What do you have with yourself today?
I have here actually my first moment when I got in touch with service design. That was 10 years ago, roughly. This is the so-called Bible of service design that was actually recommended by me by Amazon. I bought it, I read it, and it just finally made sense. Everything made sense. So I changed direction as many times in my career and said, this is the thing I want to do in my life. So then years followed and many more books, but this was the first one.
Okay, thank you. Something to remember and something to recommend, I guess.
Definitely, there's a second book that came out also. So I would maybe suggest the second one even more.
Okay, thank you.
This is service design doing, yeah, so
okay,
that's the sequel.
For participants, just write down the second book that Primož showed. Okay, thank you, Primož. And last but not least, Žiga Vraničar, who is the head of strategic development at digital agency RenderSpace. He dedicates himself to understanding the complex universe of interconnectedness between users and the needs of companies and organizations. And this led him to work on various projects in the field of strategic marketing, communication, research, UX, and service design. Žiga, welcome. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. I'm great.
And what did you bring with yourself?
Yeah, I have here a notebook. Actually, it should be a post-it, but since I'm working from home, I don't have them here. And the idea is that we're in our core a digital agency. And when we started with service design, I started with the methodology, as Anna said, the essentials with the post-it. And I was, let's say, laughed about because everything is digital and getting digitized. And I was somehow walking around with post-it notes and putting them on the wall. But actually, it's one of the essential parts of every service design project. Doesn't matter if we do a very small optimization of an application or of an entire organization. We always use post-it notes.
Okay, great, Žiga. Because you were mentioning physical post-it notes, do you also feel now, because I have that experience now, I was writing everything down in my either laptop or in my mobile phone, but now because we are all on this technological equipment, I started writing back in my physical notebook, and it really feels great because if I make a task inside and then do like this, it feels really good. Do you also feel it the same?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes because we work with ideas and concepts, it seems like everything is in the air. So when we have something in front of us and we check it, it's like we get that, I don't know which hormone it is, dopamine or whichever, that rush which comes out when we accomplish a task. So I agree, we also use that method.
Okay. Thank you for this introduction words and your products. And yes, let's go and dig deep into the service design. I will start with the easiest or maybe the toughest question for all of you. We all have kind of different definitions and also understanding of service design. What do you personally see as a service design? And maybe Anna, I can start here also with you again.
Yes, so there are many different definitions, right? But I believe there is a difference between how we each individually interpret those and basically how we use the methods and tools around it. So what for me personally, something that fits best to how I see service design is that service design is about designing service experiences for people that might be either our customers, users, or employees. And also, so this is one side, and the other side is also organizational processes that basically enable those experiences come to life. So this is how I kind of try to, this is something that I believe that fits best the way I view service design and how I work in this field.
Thank you, Anna. Others, do you agree? Would you add something, change something? Primož, for example.
I agree. There are definitely both aspects. There is a human aspect of taking into account human behavior, human needs, where huge new knowledge is coming out lately. Behavioral economics and psychology, anthropology help us understand better what is a service, because it's not tangible, right? And we are programmed to interact with objects that are physical, actually. So since the prehistoric guy that had the spear and killed an animal and he elevated himself to a higher status, we know how to interact, let's say, with a chair. It could be the ugliest chair in the world, but still we would know what to do with it. But with the service, we have to be very careful to communicate it right, to make it tangible, to design it, to be very mindful about how to interact with it and what to do it and how to set expectations. So I think this is what makes this field so powerful and so interesting at the same time.
Thank you, Primož. This was good correlation. Vojka, Can you add something here, or do you completely agree with Anna and Primož?
I agree with both of them. Maybe also, again, from producer perspective, how we see this. For us, it's like upgrading physical product with services and bringing a new product on the market, because we believe that services will differentiate you on the market in the future.
Okay, Marin, Žiga, anything to add?
I think that with the right service design, you can put order into something that could be otherwise chaotic, or steering your customer in the way that you want them to, playing the scenarios in advance so that actually the whole organization works much better. It's quite similar, let's say, from what we did on expeditions. Things can go wrong, but you have to, if you predict them in advance, what can happen, you can play the scenarios in advance and put backups in place to see, to know what to do when something happens.
Thank you. Žiga, now you can wrap up everything or add something here.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would just add that in my experience, what is the benefit of service design is that it somehow forces us to look at the whole experience. Because, for instance, our company's background is marketing, and we usually look only at the customer and at the advertising part, maybe a little bit from the experience. We don't look at from the employee's view. So what service design does, it enables us a framework from which we can connect all the dots, and we can really understand how the whole experience or service comes together to life, and where do we have maybe problems or bottlenecks, and where we are performing okay.
Okay, thank you. I wrote down 3 words that you said: people, human, and customer. And yes, it seems to be quite crystal clear that the customer is in the focus point of service design. But companies officially commit to put the customer at the center, but in practice, on the other side, they don't even go halfway many times. The reason behind is the lack of understanding what this shift really means. You already said something. They establish a customer experience department, for example, and say, okay, we are done, what's next? Can you agree with that? Primož, for example, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, actually I do. In preparation for this roundtable, I reached out to some professionals that actually are fighting the fight, right? Trying to transform companies to be as customer-centered and customer-focused as possible. Usually those roles are customer experience, innovation managers, and so on. But what I heard many times is that what they accomplish is incremental change. So fixing bits and here and there, but there is not yet a big vision and something to a North Star that they put 5-10 years ago in the future, and say, okay, we're going to differentiate our strategy based on customer experience, and we will do it for real, and we will transform. So it's a little bit more cosmetic than for real. So this is what I heard, and yeah, I agree, because we experience it every day actually as customers.
Žiga, Anna, you both work with companies to help them do service design and all the procedures. Do you also see that companies are working, let's say, more not so deep?
I would actually, yes, in terms of what Primož just said, I believe that also talking to some of the colleagues abroad and also with clients is a bit about how when organizations set up customer experience departments, sometimes it is really focused also on the measuring of what that customer experience looks like. So putting all these metrics behind it. And a lot of times those get lost in terms of they focus on specific goals. And what we say is what you measure is what you get, and not necessarily does that lead to actually not only embedding, but scaling whatever customer centricity you would like to achieve in the organization. So there's quite a few conversations now about how it's much better or potentially more impactful to start within the organization and first focus on the employee experience. And then if you fix something for the employees, they will be more motivated in terms of, first, they will see what a slight change might, how that might impact their experiences as employees, and then adopt quicker into so the approaches and the methods that you might want to use, and be motivated to change the experience or impact the experience of the consumer, and so basically outside of the organization.
Great, Anna, you made a very good point. So focusing on employee experiences, because putting customer in front of everything and everybody means a great mind shift for employees. And I believe some very focused, technically oriented employee or some others have issues with this, how demanding it is to change the mindset of employees and to give a good employee experience. Vojka, Marin, you were working in your companies with your employees. How is this?
It's very demanding because for these employees, there is a completely new world out there. So you have to be persistent. You have to explain about new reality all over again. And I think it's very important that you include them in the project, in new processes, so they get bigger picture of everything. This step, I think it's very important.
To give a bigger picture, that they understand the entire story behind it.
Yes, yes.
I wouldn't agree that it's so difficult for more technically focused people to understand service design, because actually by designing the processes, the experience, you are making them more technical. I'm an engineer myself, and I prefer much more to have something structured and thought in advance than actually deal with things when they happen. We were quite lucky because we started working with Primož already from the beginning. So we didn't have to implement this in processes that were already in place, but we started with the design in mind, and it was much easier, and then everything is much smoother now because of that.
Thank you, Marin. You made a really good point about technical people. I can agree now, definitely. Just maybe one question here, but do you feel that people, let's say, people who hear about service design, do they think about service design as a structured process? Because, you know, okay, service design, this is something like a creative and so on.
I think that, yeah, if you approach somebody who, I don't know, it's a big manufacturing company that people have been working there for many years, and somebody from outside, from the creative industry comes there, they can, for sure they have, they're not so open for it. But I think with, if you present things and when they see how they can benefit, I'm sure they will grab it with both hands.
So if I draw the line here, we can say that service design is very structured process.
I would say so. At least it was for us.
Vojka, agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. Thank you. I will put some provocative question now. I was thinking when preparing for this panel discussion, I feel that if we put customer into the center of universe, if I put it that way, and we are very focused to fulfill their needs, to solve their problems, we make our customers even more spoiled, and this is a bad word, we make them more dumb. So basically, we don't help them, we don't teach them to understand why they have some specific need, and we just deepen their basic needs. we actually downgrade kind of Homo sapiens. What is your opinion, Giga? What do you think about my thinking?
Yeah, that's an interesting view. But what I believe, or in the project connected to service design where I cooperated, it was actually not that we somehow made everything easy for them, but we somehow helped them to come through in this very complex world. As we all know, like there's a ton of technology, everything is changing from, let's say you're driving a car, there's a new car after 5 years, everything is new. Basically, wherever you turn, something is changing. Let's say you're a basic Facebook user, they change the interface and you have to learn where are now my friends. So everything is very complex. So it's not that we somehow cater to their needs like they're little babies, but we just help them to get through these complex situations in an easier manner. So, and this is from the employee's perspective. Sometimes they have to work with some technology in a company which is very complex and difficult, and then that mirrors also in the experience for the customers, which is then of course also complex. So we simplify this process and try to make the experience simple and also in a way likable and joyful, because the idea is if you like something, you will come back and use it again and you will use it more. So yeah, I would say we don't directly fulfill their needs, but we try to make life simpler and more joyful for them.
Okay, maybe some comments from others. Do we spoil customers?
I don't think so. Yeah, it's. I think what we do is finally help them achieve the outcome they're set out to do, because there are many barriers in between, and it's about helping them in the moment, but it's also about recognizing them as a person, as a human being, in moments that matter the most. For example, imagine you're an insurance company and your client just crashed a car and he calls, and he's probably, when you crash a car, how do you feel? You're probably feeling vulnerable. You're probably in shock, even if it's just a dent bumper. It's still very. It's not an easy experience to have, right? And if the insurance company recognizes the feelings, the emotions of that moment, and specifically the guy or the lady that answers the phone in the contact center and ask just a simple question, how are you? Are you okay? You know, this creates a whole different level of connectedness, of experience. And finally, you feel recognized as a person, not as someone that is paying insurance. So this is what it's all about. It's about triggering the right emotions in the key moments. And this is what creates loyalty. It's not discounts and bribing people with percentages. So I think this is the outcome that we're looking at when we design a service using service design, actually.
Okay, great, Primož. I will stop this discussion at this point because you gave a really good example. I will go from customers now from one point to the other part of the management of the company, because on the other side, the management of the company, they are the ones who will dig into the service design and will accept and fully implement it if they will dedicate the company to service design. So how did you, Vojka, convince your management of YUP that they started with service design?
In general, moving to service-driven economy actually is a fact. This cannot be neglected. And our top management is very aware of that. Of course, talking again from our perspective, it's good work in the past that gains trust, and trust gives new opportunity. So this is maybe the way we found the path to the top management.
Okay. Marin, I guess you didn't have problem with top management.
No, yeah, I think it's really the best thing and the only actually thing that you could do, because it will just get harder and harder if you postpone it in the future. We're in a lucky position that we really started from scratch, and it was easy to implement it. But because of that, it's much easier for us to scale, because we, at the same time as we designed the customer part, we also designed our internal business processes. We chose the backbone of our backend software on that basis, and it's really, everything makes much more sense. So that, let's say today we don't use anything else than Odoo, our app for the backend, and everything is up there. So no post-it notes, no notebooks or Excel papers. It's everything is much clearer. Also, the employees are happier and are most focused because they really know what to do.
Okay, great. Žiga, Anna, Primož, do you need to convince management of some company when you are working with them? Do you also help to convince them?
Well, I will start maybe. In my experience, it's still somewhat difficult to make the company understand that they need that. And mainly it's because, at least with companies we work to, they tend to be somewhat in love with their products and brands. And we have to take a lot of effort to convince them, look, your product is basically today more or less the same as theirs. Like, they think, no, the customers, they love us and we do this and that and we have corporate social responsibilities and so on. But somehow it shows also with the new generations. Like the new generations, they're not so connected with the brands. They tend to change it very quickly. They're not so loyal, but they cherish the experience. So they have to, let's say, fall on their teeth, the company, and then they realize, okay, we have to do something really with the service and with the experience itself. And there's another, let's say, challenge, I won't say problem, is that the companies they don't know who should be the CX, let's say, officer, or which profile should the people managing the customer experience have. Sometimes they put it into the marketing, but then they see it more as a communication, or they do some event, or they connect with customer support. So I think there's still lacking of knowledge what actually service design is. By the way, when we say the service design, they think, okay, like design, like they think design is like graphic design, you know, like visual design. So they need a lot of education, and one thing is also like event like this, so they can realize that that is what they need, and also that they have a very practical way or a path how to achieve that. But I believe, yeah, there are many issues in convincing them.
Okay, so convincing top management is one thing, but then implementation is next thing, which is probably the most important, because companies put all the best people on project development, but they do not put attention in the implementation phase many times. Can you, Anna, for example, explain now, how does this work? So from the start to the implementation, how long does it take? Some service design process, who is involved, what tools are being used, and where does the magic happen?
Wow, so that is a lot to explain.
Yeah. So try to be effective and yeah.
I'll try and structured. Yeah.
Structured, yes.
So I would say, so from A to Z, right, to Z, what I would say so the first parts are more about let's discover what are users' needs, or or whatever, basically depending on are we having a service, customer-oriented service or an employee-oriented service, for example, that you're developing. So you'd look at the needs of people and also look at who are all the different stakeholders involved in this, because a lot of times we find out that there are relationships that we might forget, or connections between different departments or different stakeholders that might influence how that service is experienced. So we look at those and we try and see what the opportunities might be to basically fix a broken service or an existing service, in this case. And then we co-create. A lot of this is about co-creating, and I think the Supreme Court's also, and the Lespinas case are really good examples of this, of how you co-create potentially with your users and all these different stakeholders, different ways of how that service might look. Then we prototype, which means that we find a working version of how this might work. So different ideas, and we test different, let's say, critical aspects of the service. So points where we really want to know whether this is going to work in reality or not before we put it in the market. So this will also mitigate risks that might come with this, and potential costs in the long run. So revenue loss, actually. And then normally you would run a pilot to see on a smaller scale, to see how that works, and measure, and then upgrade basically based on what you learn while you're running your pilot and you're measuring. You decide on what are the KPIs, so what is it that you need to find out, and what will be your measures of success. And later on, there's a big part also, I believe, depending on what the size of the organization or the markets are, but like the scaling of the service is then another aspect to this that I believe is also really, really relevant. I do feel that for example, as a consultancy, that we might not be involved. A lot of times we're not lucky enough to be involved in the implementation part. And a lot of times you let this go to the client, in a sense, because it might take, there's decision processes, there's budgets to approve, so it might take a while. But when you work with smaller organizations, there is a chance to do that. So be a part of that implementation phase. And I truly believe that maybe Marin and Primož might be better basically to explain this, to see how they did it in their case.
Yes, actually, thank you. I wanted to ask now Marin, because you mentioned smaller company. Marin, how did you implement, or how do you implement service design?
So the principle of Della Spina is that customers choose 3 frames that they like. We put their prescription lenses in all 3, send them home, they wear them for a week, and after a week they decide if they want to buy the glasses or how many. They can also return all 3 free of charge. So we also pay shipping both ways, and we are about 50% cheaper than our competition. But there's quite a lot of input and cost that we have to put into each home try before customers actually decide that they want to buy it and pay us. So it was crucial that we designed the process which would make sense for customers, so that they can actually select the right frames, and make sense from the business perspective for us, so that we can be profitable. And right at the beginning, Primož designed our prototyping phase, when we invited 9 people do interviews and to choose frames from paper. So we put photos on papers on long desk, and they were choosing like an offline version of the website. And they chose 3 frames. We made them, and it was 7 out of 9 actually bought the glasses, and that was really the crucial part that we saw. Okay, so it's okay to make 3 glasses because the majority will choose at least one that will fit them. So our conversion point is high enough for us to be on the profitable side. So actually all our essence of the company, of the business was tested through that test.
Okay, that's fantastic story. Primoz, I will come back to you, but before I give a word to you, I will ask Vojka. Vojka, you're coming on the other side from much bigger company. How did you and how are you implementing service design? Where do you have issues?
Yes, I don't have this kind of experience like Marin described, because now we are still deep in the project. But I can maybe share some challenges we are facing during this implementation. One thing is customer journey maps. We found out all the critical touch points or pain points, and we see the places for improvement. And sometimes for some people this is difficult to face. And also it is important that we are aware that customer journey cuts across many divisions and departments. So you have a lot of opinions, you have a lot of different situations, and it is important that that organization needs to have the same strategic goal. And it is also important that the vision, the values, everything what we are doing is aligned with service design goals, because we have to follow the same goal, that is satisfied customer, because only satisfied customers brings profit. So there are a lot of challenges.
If I can add to this, I think it basically connects really well to what Giga was saying before about that organizations that are larger will at some point face challenges of who is responsible, who is in charge of this and making decisions around this. And I faced similar challenges in a bigger corporation that I used to work for also, whereas basically with this new way of either working or designing, for example, customer journeys, or basically looking at the existing ones and saying, okay, so these are the things we should be focusing on, is you end up giving all these people that are organized in silos and know what they're doing and how they do it, have been doing for a long time, you give them more work and you kind of, you influence, or you basically mess with their little organized processes, and sometimes it's really painful for them. So this is also a process of internal change, and it will take longer. So I think it is harder in bigger organizations sometimes.
Very nice point, Anna. I think I can also agree with you a lot. Also from my previous company, yes, that would be issues, but we didn't work with service design. Primoz, now I go back or front to you. You were working also with De La Spina and with Youp, so you know the other side of the coin. What is your opinion? How do you see, how were you helping them implement these projects?
Here, what's really, really critical is it's the top management buy-in. So what we can do as externals is actually empower our partners on the other side to make a good business case about it. So how to help them explain and have strong arguments why this approach is the right one. And this is and of course, Marin was there at the beginning, so he bought in this system of working immediately because it just made sense. So I guess it's much easier for startups that don't have legacy, that don't have big systems, don't have IT or operational service models behind, and years of doing things one way. But on the other hand, big companies have bigger challenges, but I would argue that you need very strong internal capabilities to do that. Actually, as we can do just as much as external consultants and agencies. But what I think is the end game of service design is actually to have a internal, don't want to say department, but a task force or a it's also about organizational change, bringing it flatter, more metrics organization, ways of working where people are more empowered to take decisions quicker and to actually do what is right for the customer and for the business as well. So it's not just a project; it's a mindset shift actually that happens maybe if we are optimistic in 5 years, I would say.
Primož, is it then easier to work with smaller companies compared to bigger companies because you have a higher percentage of dedicated people in smaller companies?
In that regard, for sure, but smaller companies or startups, they're still in the, by definition, they're still finding their product market fit. So the change or the wiggly part is maybe somewhere else than in big established companies that are already generating revenue, profit, and they are solid organizations. So it's a different challenge, but there still are some challenges. So with Marin, we decided to do the validation of the business model through prototyping. So actually that prototyping had kind of a double goal. First, to see if this is viable, if we would know how to select the right frames, if this at all, it would be an experience that people would actually go through. But the other thing that we also were learning is how do actually people behave? How do they choose? If they choose, for example, 3 black frames, or they go crazy with red ones and blue ones as well. So it was also a learning experience for us in that regard.
Yes, for sure. Each project is a learning experience itself. Also, Giga has one experience. Anna mentioned already a couple of minutes ago the interesting project with Supreme Court of Republic of Slovenia. I would never associate Supreme Court to service design or opposite, but it seems quite logical when thinking twice. At the end of the day, Supreme Court is working with people which are at a very specific moment in not so good situation, or they are quite stressed. So what did you do exactly, and which way did Supreme Court go and works differently today?
Yeah, first of all, I would say that our luck or the good fortune of actually the court users was that the client, they were actually quite enlightened and they started from the theory. So in the theory and the research, it is said that the court will have better reputation and the things will go smoother if the, let's say, users are more satisfied. So they say that even if you lost on a court, but if you were treated okay, if you knew what was going on, if you knew who are the people around you and so on, you would give a better note to this experience than if it was vice versa. So even at the end, if you lost your case, but if you were treated okay, your experience, your whole experience, you would rate it as a good experience, which is kind of a logical. So they started from that side. They didn't say we will make the court's reputation better via, let's say, media or PR, but they say we will try to change the experience. And it is also in all over the world, they try to change it from a public administration to a public service. Because actually, and that was, let's say, the most difficult part, was to make employees understand that actually they're giving a service. Two people cannot understand, they cannot come to the end of one thing. So they need a third person, the judge, who will say, based on facts, who is right and who is wrong. So actually, they're offering a service. And this service, as any service, has different stages, and the user has to know in which stage he or she is, what will come next, what options do they have, how much will it cost, and where can they go, where can they complain, and so on. And the problem is that the users, the court users, didn't know anything, any of that. They were just faced with the big administration, bureaucracy machine, which can potentially change their lives dramatically. So they were really afraid. Like, we made, I think, about 45 interviews, and people literally cried because they were so, when they somehow experienced this experience again through the interview, it was most of the times like a bad experience, because they had no idea. They were like, for instance, they were sitting in front of the doors of the courtroom. They didn't know if they can go to the toilet, and like, will they go to the jail till the end of the night, life, and so on. They didn't know when they came into the courtroom who's there, where should they sit, where should they turn. So it was like a bad user experience. So it was really logical, but as it was mentioned before, let's say the management, they had to realize this, and they had to realize first that they had to see the people who are going to the court, that they're actually users using a court service, and they have to make this service better. Now, of course, this court service is very much defined by the law. We cannot completely make a new service and experience, but we can, as it was said before, we can make this experience more streamlined, more simple, in a way that we inform people what was going on, that we give them the tools, the knowledge, that they understand why they are there, what will happen, and so on. Somehow we're helping them to come through this court experience. And I think one of the main achievements, it was that now the president of the Supreme Court is using the words users. We have to take care of our users. So this was a big let's say, or a small success, which happened along the way.
Great, Giga. That is great. Also, shift of Supreme Court, and I can also say, because I have a personal experience with, not with Supreme Court, but with court a couple of months ago. Fortunately, I was not the victim of or something stressful, but I was also sitting at the court in front of the room, and there were like these small books, not books, but leaflets. It was written everything with very good design. Where can you go? Where is the toilet? What is coming next? How will the whole procedure goes? And I said to myself, whoa, this is something really cool, because otherwise I wouldn't know anything about the procedure and everything. So well done for this.
Thank you.
Just one question, maybe, Giga. You said that you were interviewing 45 people for this Supreme Court. Who were you specifically interviewing? People who were already, right, at the court, who were victims, who did the crime, or who?
Actually, we made like a preliminary analysis, which court procedures which do we have the most. So in Slovenia, let's say, we have a lot of procedures when people die and so on. So we calibrated which court procedures dominate. And based on this, we choose the people, let's say one victim or more than one, let's say 5 victims, 5 people who made a criminal offense, 5 people who were suing someone, 5 people who were sued by someone, and then also a few people who never had an experience on the court. So we tried to include very different aspects, because it's much different if you're going to the court as a witness, or if you're sued by someone, or if you do an offense and you're brought there by the police. So we interviewed all these people.
Okay, great. When we are talking about customers and everything, we are also dealing with their habits, and also, as we were speaking before, the habits of our employees. And I would just like to go a little bit back to habits, because changing the habits of our employees for starting doing service design and all procedures is really hard. Vojka mentioned that. Vojka, can we go back and just explain how do you change habits at YOUP?
This is a very demanding process for a big company like YOUP. For example, if you take a look what COVID-19 did, we had to react very quickly. We had to adapt to a new reality. But you see that there are some people that are in comfort zone. And we know that magic happens out of this comfort zone. So you have one people in comfort zone, one part of people that are just waiting for COVID-19 to pass. And then you have another group of people that is very active and is trying to find the way to adapt to the new situation. And it's very important that you know who those people are, who is trying to find the best solution. You try to do with them maybe a new product, a new solution, something. And then you start sharing good experiences with others. And then slowly, I can say this ball goes on. You are getting more and more people that believe you, and slowly the habits are changing. But this is a very, let's say, time-consuming process.
You said time-consuming process, and Primoz said before this panel discussion, habits die hard. How long does it take that habits die?
In a big company, I would agree with Primoz. He said 5 years, and I think it's quite true.
Okay.
I think there's this saying that people change habits, or basically adopt new ones, if you repeat something 60 times in a row. I would say that for organizational change, that might take longer. But I do really also agree that a lot of times, I think people, in order to change or to change those habits, most situations basically require that people are forced into this. And but if they see the benefit of it, they will adopt those changes. Because for an example, we worked with an energy company 2 years ago abroad, so a multinational energy company, where we were looking at how a new customer experience system in a call center might be adopted by the teams of the call center. And call centers, when you're inside of one, it's actually a really revealing experience of how people basically are their job is to answer calls, achieve targets in terms of time, in terms of customer satisfaction, then with all those meetings and quality requirements. And we found out there that we had a pilot team that had adopted the new system, but it was something that was put upon already all these existing activities that they were doing and were really time consuming and energy consuming. So they just had that added to them. But when it brought value and they felt that it had a good impact on how they perform at work, getting that feedback from their customers, it was something that they were happy to adopt. And we're happy to share with other colleagues in other departments and other regions in order for them to also be able to see how that works and how it might influence the way they work. So that is a really good point. Giga, sorry.
I can also say that in my experience, for instance, we had some panels or presentation of service design, and then a few larger companies or clients for which we do advertising or marketing. They called us and they said that this is like what you said, that's what we need, it's really cool. But then when they realized that they will have to change something in terms of processes and people and somewhat so on, they somewhat got cooler and we didn't come any further. So they believe that we will come, do something like an advertising campaign, and we will go, and the customer, we have a new customer experience and we'll be the first in the market. But when they realize it's a long-term process, it's an ongoing process, and they will have to change things, then you have to really scale it down and you say, okay, for the first year, we will just change this little part and then we'll go further. I think that, as it was said, it has to be somehow, it has to come from the upper management. It has to be in a way like an order. Of course, people have to understand it, but it takes time. It's not people get enthusiastic about it, but when they realize they have to change, it stops.
Yeah, it's a lot about having the combination of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, right? And we know that extrinsic motivation takes you just as far. It doesn't go. Maybe it's okay for a couple of weeks, but what you need then is to combine that to find the ignite the purpose in people and make them realize that they actually there are to serve customers. And it's, if we talk on a, let's say on a personal level, we all nominally, of course, we want health for ourselves, we want financial well-being, we want to have good relationships in the long term, right? But whether we do things today that actually would make it happen in the long run is connected with the fact if we can find things that are desirable actions that you can do today, tomorrow, and every following day. So it's about having that goal in the future, but also to make it desirable what we can do going towards the future. So it's a combination between the two.
Yeah, I just add, when we were working with a larger client, and it was actually not a very large service design project, just for one process. And at one point, the client who was in charge, he leaned back in his chair after a few weeks, and he said, I realize now this is actually a change management and internal communication project also. So we said, yeah, exactly. It's like that.
Fantastic.
I think that is also one of the things that we say. We've learned that you can call it whatever. It doesn't have to be, we don't need to call it service design. And sometimes it's even better. We can call it process optimization or customer experience or UX, call it whatever you want to. But in the end, we're using certain methods and tools in the process, and we structure this process around how to get, so how to solve problems for people, essentially. How to make it easier for the customer, how to make it easier, better for the employee, for the partners, for the clients. And that is definitely one thing that I think a lot of times it gets from a buzzword to when they realize, oh my God, this means that we need to also be really involved. So not only does it take a long time, but we also involve the teams within the client organizations to come along, because it will make impact if they're there for the interview, if they're there for when you're testing the prototype. This is how you build that also motivation, right? Like Primož was saying to, oh yeah, we're on the right path, we know where we're doing this. So it's also, you're kind of steering and helping them kind of realize what is the reason behind the decisions that they're making, And it's not necessarily because my boss or whoever is potentially in power that said so, but because we tested this, because our users said so. So I think that is also really powerful, but does require trust. And we need time also to build trust for that work to happen. So there's a lucky, I believe that we're lucky to have a few clients that are actually, that you're able to build trusting relationships with, and that will go on that journey with you and also spend that time and resources.
Okay, thank you for all this insightful information. It was really nice looking how you made a conversation about this. You have a lot of experiences in this field. I can feel it, I can see it. Maybe we can wrap up this part and this panel discussion with insight of what is the situation with in the field of service design in Slovenia. Primož, Žiga, Anna, I guess you have quite a good overview over Slovenia. What is your feeling? How many companies are working? Today we have 2 companies here, but there are more, right?
Yeah, I'm sure maybe what they're trying to do is put the customers in the center. Now, what they're using is not necessarily important, and if as long as this achieves the goal, right? So we can combine it. It's not always service design the answer, of course. You have agile, you have lean development, you have sometimes it's a communication problem. So it's service design is merely it's a way to put all those things together and put the customer at the center. It's one of the ways to do it. And if we talk about it, where service design is today, I guess it's at the same point as product design was maybe 20 years ago, when it was maybe still in its infancy, but companies started to adopt it because they were actually facing the urgency to change, because either they closed its doors or they adapt to the Western markets, because they basically lost the ex-Yugoslavian markets practically overnight due to the wars. And it was, change or go bust was basically it was a burning platform. And what I see here, this moment, maybe I can be provocative and say that service companies are maybe a little bit too comfortable still to truly change. And there is no pressure from the competitors. They're all in the same level, but I don't believe this is the right way to go, because they're competing on price. They are the markets are saturated. Insurance banks, telcos, they're just stealing customers from each other, but it's not basically price wars are not long-term success or strategy. So I see companies that are embarking on this boat. So they're going towards this direction, and I'm sure that in a couple of years we will see the first success stories of true transformations happening.
Okay, Žiga, Anna, anything to add here? Do you feel the same as Primož?
Yeah, I would just say, like we in our company, we traditionally work with the largest companies, which are the first or the second in their industry, and we do mainly digital marketing and so on. And I have to say, it's very rare, or the question if we can get service design come from different companies, not from these large companies. They understand, and as Primož said, they started to put the customer, or they're starting to put the customer in the focus, but somehow they still don't quite understand that they're competing on service, and they're in the comfort zone as a whole companies, and they don't feel the pressure as maybe it's felt in abroad. So they still think they can make it. In our experience, we, as Anna mentioned, we do service design in the cover of something else. We said, okay, we see you have here some problems and we will fix it, but we don't say we're, let's say, selling you service design, because as I said, it's rarely that the big company would say, yeah, this is what we need. We would order service design. We need a better customer experience, because they just think they can go by with advertising campaigns, a few events and little bit PR and stuff like that. So they still weren't hit hard by this reality, although it is changing. And also now in terms of the COVID situation, where customers are going on the internet, and now these companies, the large one, they cannot, or traditionally they don't compete on price. And on the internet, if your experience sucks, you just put off the web page, you go elsewhere, and they're starting to understand through digital. The first step for them is digital. Our digital experience sucks. We have to do something about it. So they're starting to change the experience, at least in the digital part of the service, or their experience and their understanding. The customer will go elsewhere like this. And on the internet is also very easy to access the foreign offer. So this is my experience. It's still not, like, companies don't realize they need it, and that they're not, at least in my experience, we have to somehow convince them this is what you need, not a new advertising campaign. And just one thing, for instance, we had me and my colleague, we had the presentation about service design and what we did for the court at the Slovenian advertising festival. And we asked the people online, how many of you had to design an advertising campaign for a product or service that you know it was bad, it sucked? And it was a little bit provocative question. And to our surprise, it was 70% of them. Like, they were doing an advertising or communication campaign for something they knew it was bad. But like, they never raised their hand and said, okay, listen, now, did you ever think you could change the service or something? They just did it. So what we try to raise this hand, and he said, okay, it's good. We will do a web page, but did you ever think about the delivery and customer service and so on? So this is one way we try to do it. But in general, I think it's like Primož said, it's still at the beginning. Service design.
It's a very super good point, because all the companies, all the CEOs, board members, marketing directors, everyone are customers as well in their private lives. And I'm sure they are very, very, very demanding customers. So why don't they set the same level expectations for their own company, their own customers, right? So this is where it's actually an opportunity to make them not just realize rationally, but experience this thing that is happening. So
I think it's because they're rarely customers of their own services. Because having worked in a big company and also knowing what the top management, how they, let's say, consumed their own services and products is completely different way from what it would be if you're in a, so if something gets broken, it will be shipped for you because you're that person, and you will have a special service basically for that particular product that you're in charge of. But I completely agree. I would challenge, like, this is even like be a hidden buyer, or I don't know how you translate that, but like if more people would do that, although I believe that also it's a question of priorities of how you do, basically for the top management. It's just for, in terms of for Slovenia, I completely agree with Žiga and Primož, that I also sometimes think about, is there not enough competition? Especially for these pure service like telco, insurance, like the amount of offers that we get as end consumers for changing, for example, telecom providers or TV program providers. And it's, I think with the pressure of also with digitalization, I think with this, the companies are facing a situation where they're using all these different channels to reach us. So I might be in a shopping mall and be at a stand of a telco brand, and then I might get a call from the call center offering me a special offer, and then I'll go to the website. So there's different channels. And I personally had an experience this year where these communications were not aligned. So they could not explain to me, why is this new package better from the one that I already have? And this was the same in all the different channels. And I was thinking, what are you, I mean, is there anybody that is in charge of this? How many people are they losing? And how much money are they losing with having all those people in the call center spending that time? So I'm sure that is all very well calculated in the back, but still, that is definitely one thing. And the other thing is also what Primož mentioned before, when you call it design, there's still the perception of what does the design bring here in Slovenia. And
I will need to end up here with your thinking, because our time just ran out. Well, we have like a half of minute. I guess we could discuss and chat further on for another hour and quarter. It was great meeting you and discussing with you. You also made great points. It was one great point right at the end when Anna said that it is good idea that you are a customer of your own service, because many big companies and also others, they are rarely customers of their own services. And maybe one message for all of participants here, as Vojka said, and also others, don't expect that all service design, or if we put in other words, process optimization, will happen in 1 year or a couple of months. No, it will take 5 years, even more, but you will need to wait for results. So we go back to the conference, Symptoms of Creativity. Anna, Vojka, Primož, Žiga, and Marin, thank you once again. You were great. And yes, see you when we will be back in normal times. Take care. Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.